Hello everyone. In our last class we have studied what is in previous classes we have studied what is first law and then heat capacities and all. Now in our today's class we are going to study what is second law and why there is a need of second law and what are the limitations of first law. See, what was our first law? It was delta U is equals to Q plus W. So our first law has told us very nicely that what is the relationship between heat and work, how the processes are the relation between work and heat, and also the internal energy and heat, internal energy and work done are given by first law very nicely. But it don't tell us about the flow of energy, right? Flow of heat energy, how we have good relation, we have seen the relation between these two, internal energy and heat, and internal energy and work done, but we don't know how the heat flows or its direction to flow, why it flows from in a specific direction, or is it flows in specific direction or not. So that is not told by first law. Another thing is what first law states, that the energy of an isolated system remains constant while any change or process taking place. So the first law states that, but it don't tell us anything about whether the change or that process is spontaneous or non-spontaneous. Now the term comes spontaneous and non-spontaneous. What is meant by spontaneous and non-spontaneous? So spontaneous means any process or any reaction that is taking place by its own. Okay, see, if we have a reaction, we are giving a reaction, and we just need proper initiation. After the proper initiation, that reaction will proceed itself. So that kinds of reactions or the changes which are taking place by their own are called spontaneous changes or spontaneous reactions. But the reactions which will not occur by their own, we have to give them some special conditions, or we have to perform some work on them, then only they will occur. That kind of processes or reactions are called as non-spontaneous reactions. Okay, that kind of changes are non-spontaneous. This is difference between spontaneous and non-spontaneous. Let's have an example. If we are seeing the mountain, water is flowing from top to the bottom of the mountain. That process is spontaneous. If we drop the water from upward, it will come at downward, or the river flowing upside from the mountain, it will come to the down. Okay, that kind of process is spontaneous. But the reverse of that, is that possible? No. The water will not go from ground to top by its own, right? That kind of change is non-spontaneous. Likewise, if we have food stuff, we cooked the food and it is hot now. After some time, if we put it like as it is, then after some time it will come at room temperature. The hot food will come at room temperature. That process of cooling is spontaneous. That means we didn't do anything about that. It is spontaneous, right? But the reverse thing is, if we want to heat, if the food is at normal temperature and its temperature is room temperature, and is it possible that the food will get hot after some time? No, it will not get heated by its own. We have to supply some heat. That kind of process is non-spontaneous. These are the examples of spontaneous and non-spontaneous processes. Spontaneous processes may require proper initiation. but afterwards they will proceed their own. They will not require anyone's help. So we were seeing the limitations of first law of thermodynamics. First was, it do not say anything about the direction of heat transfer, right? And second thing is that it cannot say that the process is spontaneous or non-spontaneous, the change occurring is spontaneous or non-spontaneous, and therefore we need another kind of law or another kind of rule to see whether the process is feasible or not, or if the change is spontaneous or non-spontaneous. So that kind of law is called as second law of thermodynamics. Okay, that is called second law of thermodynamics. But there are some natural observations, as we have stated. Suppose we will take a ball, it is bouncing. Now this is ball, it is bouncing, this is ground, right? After some time, in the second bounce, its height will be less than first one. Now again it is bouncing. Now this time height is again less, and it will stop. It will stop afterwards. Why this is happening? Why the energy of ball is decreasing? Why it is not bouncing as it is? Because the energy the ball possesses during the collision with ground, it is gone to the ground. Energy from ball is gone to the ground. So what happens? It is in the form of heat. We have already seen that heat energy is random, and random motion, that is thermal energy, thermal motion, and that thermal motion is caused by heat, while work is directional. Okay, work requires direction, but the flow is random, heat flow is random, so energy flow is random, so it is heat in the form of heat. Now again it will bounce with remaining energy, again it will collide, and again loss, thermal losses. So loss in the form of heat. Therefore we can say that this type of kinetic energy was directional. It was directional, but after heating to ground, ground will absorb that energy. That means directional energy is changed in the form of non-directional energy. That's why energy tends to become random, energy tends to become dispersed. Okay. Actually, in the first law, we have seen the heat and work done and relation between internal energy and heat, but we don't know that the heat absorbed, or there is no possibility of complete conversion of heat into the work. First law do not tell about this also. Now let's say the Kelvin, second law of thermodynamics. The first statement is Kelvin statement. What Kelvin states? It states that there is no possibility of process which results in absorption of heat from reservoir and its complete conversion into the work. This is Kelvin's statement of second law of thermodynamics. What it states, there is no process in the universe which can result in the absorption of heat from reservoir and its complete conversion into work. That means, in other words, efficiency of any machine will not equal to 1. It will be always less than 1. When it will be 1, if it is converting the total heat absorbed into work, then only efficiency will be 1. So, if this is the hot reservoir, now here is engine. This is the direction of heat, and now this heat is going to work, performing work. So in this diagram represents the Kelvin statement. Here this is hot reservoir, engine absorbs the heat from hot reservoir and there is a total conversion of heat into work. This will not possible at all. There is no process, naturally occurring process that converts, no artificially, no naturally. There is no this kind of process where the complete conversion of heat into work possible. This was a Kelvin statement. If we supplied the petrol to our engine, then the conversion of heat from heat obtained from this petrol will not perform total heat will not perform work. Some heat will be wasted in surrounding. Some energy is wasted in the form of heat into the surrounding. This is stated by Kelvin's law. Now, second statement is Clausius statement. What Clausius says? Clausius statement for second law. It says, heat never flows from cool reservoir to hot. Sorry, let me see that. Heat never flow from cool body to hot body spontaneously. This is stated by Clausius, right? And it is general observation that there is never flow of heat will be never from cool object to hot object, right? If we have a rod and we are heating this side, then this will be hot and this will be cool end. Now heat will always flow from hot side to cold side. This type of flow is not possible. Hot reservoir and cold reservoir. Flow of heat. This is a diagram for Clausius statement. This kind of flow of heat will never be possible. Will never possible spontaneously. That means it can be possible by non-spontaneous way. How? The example of this kind of non-spontaneous process from heat flow from cold to hot body is the refrigeration, right? In our refrigerator, some work is done to perform the flow of heat from cold object to hot object. Therefore, our food stuff becomes cool in the fridge. It requires some work done. Now, the Kelvin statement and Clausius statement, these both statements can be understood or can be represented by a single term called entropy. Let's see that entropy. Entropy can represent these two statements very nicely, and also, so therefore second law uses entropy to explain the processes. What is entropy? We can say that entropy is a randomness or disorder or dispersal of energy. You know, every process in the universe try to increase its entropy. Everything in the universe try to increase its entropy. Likewise, every process try to increase every object try to decrease its energy. Like from the atoms to very big molecules, everyone try to decrease energy, right? In organic we see that the reactions are feasible in which there is less hindrance or there is decrease in energy. That type of reactions are favorable. That's why in the universe everything try to decrease its energy. That means it will try to disperse energy in another forms, like in the form of thermal motion, like in the form of heat, right? But work will not be the dispersed motion. It is directional motion. There is no randomness. So work and entropy, they have entropy, do not have any relation, but there is a relation between entropy and heat, okay? Because heat is a random motion and work is directional. So entropy means, let's have an example of a gas. Every gas, if we put the gas in the container, it will try to occupy full volume of that container. It will not try to be in the corner or in the bottom corner of the reservoir. No, it will try to occupy everything. So it will try to increase its randomness, right? Solid, liquid and gas. So which one have largest entropy? It will have largest entropy because more disordered. They will move in any direction, right? In liquid, disorderness is somewhat less. If you are put it in container, it will occupy whole volume of container. More randomness, while it will occupy limited volume. Less disorder. And in solid, there are unit cells in crystalline solids, and also solids have definity in their shape. So there is less disorder. So entropy of solid is greater than, liquid is greater than gas. You get about entropy. Entropy means dispersal of energy. Like in the example of ball, we have seen that ball try to disperse its kinetic energy into thermal energy. Therefore, its velocity decreases and it will become stable after some time. It will give out its whole energy in the form of thermal motion to the ground and to the atmosphere also in the form of heat. Now, that is entropy. Notation is S. So, this is all about the basic concept of entropy. Now how can we represent the entropy, or what is the formula for or we can say what is the definition of entropy mathematically? Let's see, if our system is at state 1 and it is going to state 2. Now the process, in this process it will try to disperse its energy, right? So while doing the process, and all natural processes are spontaneous, okay? All natural processes are irreversible and they are spontaneous, therefore they are spontaneous, right? What is meant by irreversible? We have seen that if this is state 1, this is state 2, then it will never occur in opposite direction itself, by itself. It will go forward only, it will not go backward itself. That processes are irreversible and they are natural. That type of processes are natural. And so any process occurs, any natural process occurs because of why? Because it try to increase its entropy. The total entropy in all natural processes, S total will always increase. Every process, naturally occurring spontaneous process, accompanied by increase in entropy, increase in its total entropy. Now we have an example, system 1 and this is state 1, sorry, state 1 and this is state 2. It will have some entropy value, it will have some entropy value, right? Now entropy means extent of dispersion of energy, dispersal of energy. Every system try to disperse its energy, and in this case it has some dispersal of energy, that means entropy, and state 2 will also have some dispersal of energy. Therefore the difference between dispersal of energies can be calculated by one formula. That means, see, entropy is related to heat and not related to work. We have already seen entropy means randomness, and heat provides thermal motion, that is randomness. So entropy can be written as Q reversible upon temperature. If such kind of transformation is going on, then the extent of dispersal of energy can be denoted by heat supplied to the system, reversibly heat supplied to the system divided by temperature of the system. This whole temperature of the system, heat supplied divided by temperature. This is the definition of entropy. If the process is reversible, then see, if you want to calculate the entropy, delta S, it will be equal to integration of initial to final state dq reversible upon d. So if we have a system and we want to calculate the change in entropy, then how will we do? First we will find out one reversible path between state 1 and state 2. Then we will integrate the value of infinitesimal small value of dq, because the process is reversible. When we say that process is reversible, if our value is infinitesimally small. So if we apply, we have a gas, we want to expand it, and when it will be reversible expansion, if we are applying the external pressure is adjusted in the way that the pressure inside the gas will always be greater than small value, infinitesimally small value than pressure outside the system. That means P external will slightly greater than P inside, internal pressure. pressure inside will less than pressure will be greater than external pressure should be less. If this pressure is less than very small amount, then small amount of expansion, then in next step again pressure will be decreased, external pressure will be decreased from by small amount, then again small amount of expansion will occur. In this way, small change. Therefore these small steps we can integrate them. We can integrate by using reversible pathway, heat, and divide it by temperature at which the whole process is taking place. In this way we can find out entropy, change in entropy. And we can also write delta S for finite change. Delta S is equals to, we cannot write delta Q, it is path function, so Q reversible upon T. This is the definition of entropy, right? Let's see entropy change in expansion of ideal gas. Now isothermal change, so delta T is equal to 0. According to first law we know delta U is equal to Q plus W. Now what about delta U? If delta T is 0, we know that delta T is equal to delta U is equal to CV delta T. If delta T is 0, delta U will be 0. If this is 0, then Q plus W. Therefore Q reversible, this is process is reversible. If this expansion reversible, then Q reversible is equals to W. Now this is all. Now in the isothermal expansion, what will happen? We have already seen isothermal reversible expansion derivation, and W was minus P delta V, and we have obtained the last value was minus nRT ln V2 by V1. If expansion is from volume V1 to V2, then we can write W is equal to minus nRT ln V2 by V1. Therefore we can write it is minus W. It will go in this side. Therefore we can write Q reversible is equal to minus W. It is equal to nRT ln V2 by V1. This will be Q reversible. Now we know the definition of entropy. What is it? Delta S is equals to Q reversible upon T. Therefore it will be equal to, T will be cancelled out, T and T will be get cancelled, and hence nR ln V2 by V1. Okay. So final derivation for entropy change in the isothermal expansion of ideal gas. That's it for today. In our next lecture we will discuss again different reversible and irreversible changes, and in that case how the entropy changes. Okay, thanks for watching. If you have any doubts, please let me know.